The interview that we are bringing you today is packed with so much value. Seriously, this has been one of my favorite conversations on the podcast thus far. My guest is a friend of mine, Jess Glazer, former celebrity personal trainer and elementary school teacher who turned her online side hustle into, get this, $1 million business in less than 2 years. We talked about so much in this interview, everything from pivoting, scaling, and finding a new normal, whatever that is, within your business when the world, as we know it, changes. And we all know that's exactly what has happened this year. So I know you're going to love this conversation. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to share today's guest with you because she is someone who I have had the chance to get to know through a mastermind. We are in together. And especially during this time right now where everyone is having to pivot, I have gotten to watch her help entrepreneurs, just like the women in our community, take their businesses online, which we've never really had to think about like we do right now. So Jess, thanks so much for hanging out with me today.
Yay, Lindsay, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am equally excited. So this is going to be fun. I know there's a lot of people who really have had to reevaluate, or my favorite word right now in this season is reimagine what their impact can look like and how to serve in a bigger way by taking those services online. And I know you've been helping a lot of entrepreneurs do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. Reimagine.
Yeah.
It makes it sound exciting.
Much more empowering context. Yeah. Although inside, I'm sure from time to time, we're all freaking out at some level. Yeah. But before we dive into all that, because I know you have just so much value to share, I would love to start with your story and your journey, because one of the reasons we have this platform is I think one of the most effective ways to learn is through other people's stories, and not just the highlight reel, because you've got a really impressive highlight reel, but I'd love to hear like what that journey was like from where you started, which I'm going to let you kind of share this, to the business that you have today, which is over a 7-figure business. Yeah. And I know that didn't just happen overnight or easily.
No, it's so funny. Okay, so how far back do we go? I mean, really, we can go back to kind of what I've always done, if you will. So I went to college for my doctorate of physical therapy. I was always an athlete growing up. I've been a celebrity personal trainer since 2002. So it's been 18 years, which is pretty crazy. And I just always have been in the path of fitness and training and something in that capacity. After college, went to school, actually dropped out of my doctorate program. So that was at the time, I thought a really big fail, or just a really big disappointment. Later on, I realized why it all kind of happened in hindsight. But after that, ended up teaching elementary school phys ed for 8 years. And of course, there was a small stint in fashion school, which I never really talk about, but I did work in the fashion industry for a little over a year. Taught elementary school phys ed for 8 years while I was also coaching, and I was working as a personal trainer on the side. And then in 2013, I started doing fitness competitions like bodybuilding. And the coach that I was working with lived in a different state. So I was paying her for essentially email workouts and macros, and a little light bulb went off, and I decided in 2014 that I could start doing the same thing. So that's really when I first started my, what I like to call cute side hustle, and started training people just through email. And then it kind of rolled into ebooks and 12-week programs, and then paid Facebook groups. And in 2017, I decided to leave my job as a teacher after 8 years. I sort of took a leap, jumped fully back into the fitness industry where I was working as a trainer, 15, 16-hour days, and just kind of working on that cute little side hustle. I was able to bring that into a multiple 6-figure business, all health and fitness online. And then a lot of my friends here in New York City, a lot of my trainer friends were asking me how. And so the teacher in me just started sitting down with one friend, and then it was 3, and then it was 9. And we were like sitting down every Thursday at noon behind my laptop, and I was teaching them what I had done to build this business. And so in 2018, I started pivoting towards business coaching, and finally pulled the plug on all things health and fitness, and totally shifted into business. And that's where I am now.
Which I love it, right? like if you could sum up, and sometimes that's the hardest thing to do because I know from my own journey and knowing you just a little bit, like there are so many moments within that were defining or challenging. And it's almost like the surface level view, the 10,000-foot view that we can see of someone's journey versus like being in it, when you're in it. So what would you say have been some of the most challenging points for you? Like what if you really had to overcome in that, however many
Myself.
years? I know
Yeah,
I'm like,
myself and my ego.
mostly mine are always the biggest challenges I've faced have always been internal.
Yeah.
So it's actually really reassuring to hear you say that too.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I get in my way a lot, whether
yeah.
it's perfectionism, control, whatever that looks like. And that has come up in my life over and over. I struggled with an eating disorder for a decade. Like it's just always coming back to control for me and being perfect
Mm,
and doing things a certain way. And this high achiever kind of, yeah, type A control freak.
no wonder we get along so
Yeah.
well. But on that topic of control, I know I've had my own experience with this. How has that shown up now in this recent season where we were reminded really overnight, it seemed, of how little control we actually have over the outside circumstances? Like how has that affected you, or how have you how have you moved through it?
It's so interesting. I think the work that I know that the work that I've done on myself has put me in a situation now where I actually didn't look at the situation we're in as a lack of control. Like I never
Mm,
once felt that things were out of control,
yeah.
because in my life, in my relationships, and in my business, I am pretty much in control of the decisions. I work for myself,
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, all these different things. So while yes, the outside external world is shut down and maybe I can't go out to dinner or I can't see friends, the things that I can do, it's just where my focus has been. So I've just been focusing on the things that I can do, and I hadn't really looked at it the other way around.
Interesting. I love
Yeah.
that perspective. And it isn't surprising to hear because like as part of this mastermind and some of the work we've all been doing together as a group, I've really watched you be one of the first to truly lean in. And I don't know how much you actually had to pivot your offerings, but what I saw from an outsider looking in is you stepping up and serving in an even bigger way. It's like so inspiring to have people like you in my life, because whenever I was struggling with anything that I, may have felt I lost control of, or things that weren't happening as my perfect plan had been for the year, it only takes a moment to look around and realize how many people are turning this into opportunity. And you have so been one of those people for me. It's
Thank
been really,
you.
really fun to watch.
Thank you.
Um, we were talking a little bit before starting the interview, though, about because this is definitely something I've wrestled with during this time is this opportunity burnout, you called it.
Yeah.
It's almost like a hangover of looking
Yeah.
at all the opportunity around us. And I know you've been helping people work through that a little bit as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer. I think I think for a lot of us, including our own coaches and mentors that we work with, this is a conversation that keeps coming up. So for someone who might not fully understand that's listening, what I'm calling opportunity burnout or opportunity hangover, it's essentially seeing so much opportunity right now for new things, for growth, for helping people, for serving, that you're over serving and over delivering, and you really do start to kind of to burn out. And I know when everything sort of first came to a halt and really things were shutting down and people were losing their jobs and doors were closing, back in March, I just jumped into full blown service mode. And so it was like dozens and dozens of free coaching calls and jumping on the phone and helping people and doing it with such love and doing it with such just a place in my heart of like, I have these tools that I can help these people. So I felt a sense of responsibility, but also selfishly, it fuels me, right? It fills my cup back up being able to
Totally.
help. So, but you do get to a point where you're just giving and giving, and then you're empty, and also still serving the clients that I am working with and having the time for my family and my friends and my husband. And, so really feeling a little bit burnt out around how much opportunity there is. And then also I think the words should and could and would, and sitting with like, I should be doing more and I could be doing something else. And
Mm,
should I create something new? And seeing so many amazing people in our circle. There's so many amazing people in the bubble that we're in. And so when you
yeah.
see those people step up and start offering new things or different things, then you start to put pressure on yourself of, well, I should be doing that too.
Totally.
And so, yeah, it's just been causing this like exhaustion, but it also is fueling you at the same time. So it's a very bizarre place to be.
Oh, you literally put words to my exact experience. And I think I've had to develop a higher level of self-awareness in this time because not only is there so much opportunity, there've been a lot of requests, right? So I'm now hosting this online summit, this online event, and I want to say yes to all of them. That is what fuels me. And at the same time, I also was starting to notice that I was not feeling the way I wanted to feel about showing up on all of these. So I started to have to say no. And so it's like this opportunity burnout or having to say no burnout. But for you, how do you determine, like, what is your litmus test for deciphering what opportunities you did move forward with or what things you are saying yes to?
Oh, that's such a good question for right now. So I want to acknowledge you first because I see you and you're doing the exact same thing and you're just serving in such a beautiful way, and the pajama parties and the Zoom calls, and like it's incredible to see what you've done with your community. So I acknowledge you for that.
You're the
Because
best.
it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think people think it is easy. And I think people think it's all fun and games. And I also think that right now, as people are stepping into this new space, they're realizing that it is a lot of work and it is hard. So I'm hoping that people can acknowledge the work that you're doing and some of the other people out there. But to answer your question, my litmus test, I have actually danced with burnout, or I've gone through burnout a couple times before. So for me, there are just certain kind of symptoms almost that start to appear as I start to like lean into a little bit of that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know when it's happening, whether it's mood swings or just a kind of like what would the word be? Like no mood, just like empathetic, like kind of blah, trouble sleeping, craving things more often sugar than just like my regular daily chocolate, like really craving chocolate, not wanting to like work out, not feeling motivated. So for me, a lot of gut issues as well will come up. So bloating and just a little sensitivity to food. So if I'm seeing any of those things present themselves, I know right away, like that's a really good litmus test for me. But in terms of litmus test for saying no and saying yes, something that I've had to focus on this year, ironically, the word on my wrist, I have like an intention every year, and the word on my wrist this year was expansion. And my whole theme of 2020 was to slow down, to speed up, because I have played around with burnout quite a lot in 2019. And so my plan this year, which is no longer, was to really like have a lot of space and do more playing and less working and more things for fun. And so right now, the yes and the no is coming from checking myself. Is this fun or is this work? And then also, because expansion for me was on the horizon for business, I've done a lot of growth in business, and now I'm looking for scaling, which is expansion. So I have had to check myself and just see, how will this serve my audience? How will this serve my clients? Is this more of the same, or is this new? And really looking at that, because as you know, like we do have these bubbles. And sometimes when you're in this bubble, it's like it's the same people, it's the same message, it's the same teachings. And while I want to say yes to everybody, especially my friends, I need to make sure that my audience and my clients are getting the most value. And so I think it's really important, because they already know about those people or those topics or those trainings. I want to bring them new things. Yep. Right. So I've had to really look and see, like, how far out of my norm is this?
Oh, that's so good. I'm always curious to hear other people's, just, I think litmus test is the best word to use for it, because that is something, that word scale that you use, an expansion. I've learned in the last year how much that requires me to say no to things that might be good and I could justify, to keep space for the things that are actually meant to propel, our mission to the next level. And it is so freaking hard.
It is. And it's funny, because for me, I found saying yes helped me grow. Saying no is helping me expand. And if you could see us, like, growth is kind of vertical, like a building going up, and expansion or scaling would be horizontal, going across. And so there are two very different things in business. But I'd love to actually ask you, what's your litmus test on yes and no?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I put clear boundaries in place before the requests even come. That way, I know if a request comes and it's a call before 11 a.m., I know that that time is reserved for my most creative work. It's an easy no.
Yeah.
Something that I had wanted to put into place, and I like laugh at myself even saying like, oh, I was really trying. Like we all know, and you're not actually doing it until you like commit to it. There's no try. But one of the things I kept saying that was important to me was to take at least one full day off.
Mm,
Easier said than done when you love what you do. I know
yeah.
you have the same relationship to your work. And during quarantine, I finally have just like completely blocked off one day a week. And so even I got a request yesterday from someone putting together something incredible, and it fell on a Sunday, which is now my day that's just protected for just me and my family. And it makes it easier to say no when you decide ahead of time where the
Yeah.
boundaries are. Like that's something new that I've really put into place that has made it a little bit easier to
Yeah.
say no.
I love
Mhm.
that. I actually, the exact same thing happened to me. I've been trying to take a day off for, I don't know, well over a year. And only in quarantine now is Sunday my day. And I'm
Right?
just like, absolutely not.
Which is so funny because I don't know why it took that situation for me to stick to that commitment. So if anything else, the other thing I'm doing in this time is reflecting back on why did I think it was so important for me to say yes to things on
Hmm.
that day that I was really committing to having to recharge. So I'm finding that I'm far more ready to go back to work on Monday, even though I get to set my schedule.
Yeah.
I'm just so much more refreshed for Monday when I do honor that time and just do something fun or playful. I love that you brought that up too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also like scarcity, right? Having that mindset of like, if I say no, will there be more opportunity or I'm afraid there won't be? And so you're
So
coming from a
true.
place of scarcity where you're like, you have to say yes to everything. And then when you
Yeah.
realize that's not the truth, and if you have an abundance mindset and you say no, you leave more room for magic. And so you get to a point where you start to see
Okay, there's been like so many great retweetable moments already. I just love you. Seriously, I learn so much every time that we talk. And I know that there's a lot of people who, right now, like we acknowledged at the beginning, are having to reimagine their business. Maybe it was like a big part of my own business is a live event. There have been
Yeah.
a lot of our friends who've had to reimagine their live events or in person services that have now had to transition online. Talk a little bit about maybe what you see this time is teaching us
Yeah.
about the having a digital presence for our businesses.
Yeah, I think everybody's noticing now that number one, diversifying your streams of revenue is never a bad thing. So I am from the background of fitness, like I said before. So much of my audience, many of my clients, they come from the health and fitness background. And there's a lot of resistance there. A lot of them don't want to be online because they love being in person. And I get it. And I agree. There's nothing like an in-person training session. And now they're seeing the importance of diversifying their streams of revenue. And so I think if you can think bigger and lift the ceiling and not like compartmentalize yourself into such a small area, what if you could do both? So what if this time is teaching you that you could do both? I also think that a lot of people, we think in this box, and a lot of what we do in person, we don't imagine that we could do any way else. And now it's actually pushing us to the edge to realize there are other ways to do it. And I think that there is just a lot of business, unfortunately, that was going to be kind of taking a turn anyway. A lot of retail, right? Like retail has been slowly disappearing over the last 15, 20 years, probably longer. And so I think, unfortunately, it's very sad, of course, that I think this is going to put a lot of retail specifically out of business. That might not come back, but it's also opening a new opportunity. So every time a door shuts, one opens, right? And so
Yeah.
this incredible opportunity now, we can reach more people. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, even on free coaching calls the past couple of weeks, who've made more money in this last month and more impact in this last month than they ever have in person or had in person. And they're having all these light bulb moments. And it's like, yeah, you can work with more people, and you could work with people literally around the world. And I think
Yeah.
that's just such an exciting thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's probably been the most fun thing to watch as your friend is seeing your excitement for the breakthroughs that your clients are having.
Yeah.
Where would you say, if you could boil it down to maybe a few key breakthroughs or ahas or mindset shifts that especially is like allowing those people who were in a box? I love how you use that terminology because I think we all do that to ourselves.
Yeah.
What have been some of the biggest shifts mindset wise that have allowed people to have these expansive results? Because that's just incredible.
Yeah, I think value, like value and worth and understanding. So something that I keep bringing up again, just with this community, a lot of the trainers that I work with have had resistance around pricing themselves where they should, where they're valued, how much they're worth when they bring things online, because they think that their work online is not as valuable. And so I use this pizza analogy. And so if you sit down at a restaurant, a pizza place, and you order a pizza in New York City, it's going to be at least $25, right? And then you're going to pay tip on top of that. If you order a pizza to your house and you get delivery, does the pizza cost less? No, it's still going to be $25. You're still hopefully going to tip the person, and you probably had to pay a delivery fee on top of it because you're paying a premium for it to be delivered to your door. So when you shift the mindset of, I can give you a wonderful experience, I can still have a relationship with you, there can still be customer service. It's all about the experience, right? At the end of the day, the only thing that you can't do in person is the energy isn't quite the same. You can't physically touch the person, right? You might not be able to physically spot them or help them. But in terms of just trainers, right, you can still correct form. If you're a hairstylist or a makeup artist, you can still tweak colors. You can still tell people what to do and mimic and mirror. And so you can still teach, you can lead, you can coach, you can serve. And so I think for people, there's been a really big mindset shift of just, okay, I can charge what I'm worth. And I do see now that there is value in working, digitally.
That Instagram graphic that you created about the pizza analogy, I think it was just in the last few days, but
Yeah.
it was I feel like my brain like was the little emoji where, your mind is blown. That's exactly what I was like. I had never thought about it in those terms.
Yeah.
You're right. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and I would actually love to hear if this has been part of your journey from what you used to be making to what you now make. But because truly everything, and this is what I've been going through in this last year, is our business has quadrupled, like year over year, it's quadrupled.
Amazing.
And it has not at all been from something I did more of. It hasn't been more action. It's actually been the mindset shift first, which allowed for more intentional action and different action than I was taking before because I couldn't see it. Has that been your experience too for your own business journey?
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, I was a teacher, right, in New Jersey. There is a ceiling. Part of my journey of leaving teaching, and I want to be clear on this for the listeners, because a lot of people will say to me like, oh, you're so brave, or that was so courageous that you quit your job. And I disagree. I think, yes, there's a little bit of risk that I took, and it was scary for sure. I left my pension, my tenure, I left my benefits and all of that. I wasn't brave. I didn't jump and leap and wait for my wings to grow. I was so uncomfortable in my life. I was so unhappy that I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I got to a breaking point, and part of that was the actual ceiling. Like there was a literal and a figurative ceiling, whether it was the financial cap that I could make or the hours that I worked or the vacations. Teaching is an incredible job, and I acknowledge every teacher out there, and it's not easy. And trust me, I do miss having summers off, which you're never fully off. You work. Let me be clear. You work when you're a teacher in the summer. But having to structure my life around those holidays and the days off that I had and whatever that looked like, I felt like I was I was shrinking. I felt like as I was getting older, I was getting smaller and smaller, and the walls were literally like caving in on me. And ironically, expansion, right? I was craving more. I wanted to expand. I wanted to breathe, and I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. And so that ceiling also was my money mindset and the relationship I had with money and the story that I told myself about how much I could make or what that life would look like. And I knew I wanted to make a bigger impact. And at first I got a lot of flack because as a teacher, you make an incredible impact. And I left 3 years ago, and I still talk to so many of my students because of social media. We keep in touch. I know I've made an impact. Like they've written college essays and had me look over them. And So I'm aware that I made an impact, but I felt like I could make a bigger impact. And it wasn't from more work. It was, like you said, it was more intentional work, more intentional messaging. And I have been able to work with more people than I ever would have.
Okay. That's such a great way to put it, because we're always, I think, no matter what we're doing for a living, we're making an impact on a certain scale. And I remember, I think it was our mentor, Chris Harder, who, shared just the analogy that, as your impact expands, that is one of the ways to expand your income,
Yeah.
the more people you're affecting. And so that really kind of brought it full circle. I love that.
Yeah. And shout out to Chris, right? I mean, Chris and Lori both have played such a huge role in my life, in my money mindset, in my understanding of all of it, and just seeing what's possible. They've trailblazed, and I've just watched and been in awe of everything that they do. And they've just inspired.
We're
so
big
much.
fans over here.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Harders. And that actually brings up a question I'd love to hear your take on, because people are probably so tired of hearing me talk about this on the podcast. Anytime I can work in a plug for why you should have a mentor, I will do it.
Yeah.
Because, and I want to know if it's been true for you, but for me, it's been everything. I wouldn't be where I'm at had I not hired mentors and specifically paid them a lot of money that made me uncomfortable. Truly, that's like my secret to success. So tell me about your experience with that, because I know you've done the same.
Oh, it's the one thing people ask all the time, like, what shifted your business from a cute side hustle to like the multiple 6 and then 7 figures? That's it. I had mentors. I had coaches and mentors. I paid. When you pay attention. I asked for help. Chris is one thing he always talked. I put my ego aside. I asked for help, which is not easy for me. And it's funny. It's been a theme in my life. We talked about before, control and all that has been a theme. The few times that I've hit a breaking point where I kind of had to ask for help, when I went to outpatient therapy for my eating disorder, when I left my job and decided I was going to do something else, it's the moments that I've put my ego aside, said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing and I need help, that then my life has just completely taken a turn for the better. And so it's been the same thing with coaching and just getting in the room and meeting people like yourself. Like I wouldn't be around these people if I wasn't in these groups. And I've gotten flack from people, oh, you pay for your friends. I am happy. I am so happy to pay to be around the most incredible, heart-centered, impact-driven people. Like there's no shame.
No shame at all. I've never thought about it like that. And truly though, we're not paying to be friends with certain people, because at the end of the day, it still comes down to who you are, how you show up, but putting yourself in a room where the other people put just as much on the line to be there as you did, immediately creates a common bond. And I almost feel like it created this knowing of what kind of human beings those are. And I definitely want to have more of those kind of human beings in my circle. So it kind of just like is this beautiful cycle that reinforces itself. And it's brought people like you into my life that I might not have otherwise gotten to meet, because we live on opposite sides of the country. Yeah. So huge fan of
the mentorship. Coaching. Yeah. Coaching and mentorship. It's the coaches are always, you go in for the coaches, and then it's also the community that you get out of it. And we learn so much from each other. We don't just learn from the coach. And it's so true. It's so silly to not invest in yourself and your business if someone else has walked the walk and taken the path you want to, and they can help you navigate, because there's going to be challenges regardless. But if they can help minimize the amount of challenges that you have to deal with, because there's a lot of them, you might as well help get a little bit of help from somebody, right?
Amen. Well, so there you go, guys. See, I found another reason to bring up why mentorship. No, this is kind of a perfect reason to pivot, because you now mentor businesses like you shared. And one of the things you've really been helping business owners do right now is reimagine a way to have an online presence for their business. So I think what I'd love for you to answer is, let's take it from the stance that someone had a business pre-COVID that had no online presence. Where should that person start? Like, what should their first steps be? And then we can talk about, for those that may have already had an online presence but just want to grow it.
Yeah. So I think getting a really good understanding for what is your niche, or your niche, as some people call it. So what is the area that you are an expert in? What are you teaching? What is that kind of circle or bubble that you're in? And who is your ideal client? Who is the client that you're working with? Because If you don't have a social media presence, it's important that you understand where your people are hanging out. So just because someone that you love is on Instagram and you think you should be on Instagram, if your client is not there, that's not the best place for you to spend your time. Maybe they're on Facebook, maybe they're on LinkedIn, maybe they're on Pinterest. So really get a clear understanding for your current clients. Where are they hanging out? What platform is most interesting to them? And then I would put your focus in on that one platform, because it's so easy to feel like we need to be on everything and building, the email list and the text message list and the website. And it's exhausting, and it's not possible to do all at the same time. Yeah. So when you're starting, it's just one thing. And for that, it would be, where are your people hanging out? And then the next part, this is really important, is to do market research. So ask your people what they need. What are they looking for? What are they interested in? I think a lot of times when we're starting, we get caught up in feeling like we need to constantly create content, and we need to imagine, if you will. We need to just imagine it. We need to think it up, and that burns us out. And you'll hear people all the time, well, I have nothing to say, or I don't know what else to say. I'm empty. So the beauty here is that you get to ask your audience, even if your audience is 2 people, you get to ask them, what is it that they're struggling with? What is it that they're looking to get to? What are their goals? What interests them? What do they want to learn more about? And then if you really, truly are doing this, you need to then take what they say and create content around that. And I think that's the hardest part for people, because we still get stuck in the, well, I want to talk about this. And at the end of the day, when you're using social media for business, it's not about you. It's not about you at all. It's about your audience or your client.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This just brought up a scenario in my mind with a friend of mine about what you were saying, asking your audience what they want to hear, what they need. And I had this friend who was a macro coach and had that same feeling. I ran out of things to say. And we were doing this small group mentoring. And one of the girls, finally, 10 minutes into her sharing about her business and kind of brainstorming what she could talk about, a girl kind of raised her hand on the Zoom call, and she was like, this is probably so dumb, but what is a macro? And it literally, for all of us in that moment, was like, whoa, we are overcomplicating our content strategy, because we could be talking about the most fundamental things, thinking everyone knows that already. When she could have created a whole series around what is a macro? Why protein? Why carbohydrates? And it literally, for all of us, we now are the same group of friends. We're always going, okay, what's my macro? What's the thing that's so obvious to me but isn't as obvious to other people? It changed my life forever, that one conversation.
Because the gap gets so big, and you forget what it was like to be at the beginning. And I actually have a really great, quick tip if you want on content.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay. So as we're on Zoom, you can see I have Post-it notes behind me. If you know me or follow along, you'll see that I'm never a foot away from a Post-it note. So the way that I teach content, this is really, really great. You can do this in the note section of your phone, but also if you're more of a visual person, you might want to think about Post-it notes for a second. So in an ideal world, I'd love you to post Monday through Friday. If you have really great engagement on weekends, maybe it's there, but 5 days a week is really great. So we create what we call content buckets. So or pillars, 5 different buckets. That's one for each day. The same 5 buckets are going to happen every single week, but you're going to rotate. So it's not always going to be bucket 1 on Monday, bucket 2 on Tuesday. So you're going to kind of flip them around. One of your buckets I'm going to give your audience for free is your personal story. So your personal story, that's how people know, and trust you. It makes you relatable. It's always going to be something about, it could even be why you created this or why you got into hairdressing or whatever that looks like, but it's your personal. The other 4 buckets are going to be around your niche and your ideal client, which is why that's so important. So let's go with health and fitness for a second, just because it's easy for people to understand. One bucket might be all exercise, movement, fitness, anything. That could be how to do a workout or why to modify an exercise, anything like that. One bucket might be nutrition. So what is a macro? What is a carb, right? Recipes that you love, myth-busting diets. One whole bucket might be something like general health and wellness. You talk about sleep and water and biohacking and stuff like that. So once you have your 5 different categories, what you then do is you just kind of look at your wall, if you have Post-its on a wall, and you sit down for a moment, light a candle, put on some music, and you just start dumping ideas down onto other Post-it notes, and you line them up into pillars. So now you actually have all these different ideas about things you can talk about. And a really great idea here, this is why I love using my note section of my phone. I have 5 folders. They're each named my content bucket. And then if I'm listening to a podcast, I don't know, maybe Powerhouse women, and someone on the podcast says something that strikes a chord where this has happened to all of us. You're like driving to work or you're with the kids and you're like, oh, that's such a good piece of content. Oh, I want to talk about that. That's such a great idea. What I do is I grab my phone because it's typically a foot away from me and I'll figure out what bucket does that quote or does that concept fall under. And then I just write basically like the title of it. And I don't write the caption. I just write one note of what that piece of content, that quote, that concept, that idea was. So if anything comes up, I'm scrolling through social media and I'm like, ooh, that's a great thing. I actually disagree with this person. I want to write about it. I go into my content buckets. I write down kind of what the general overarching theme of that concept. And then later in the week, when I'm finding time to do creative work before 11 a.m., like you said, right? I will sit down and I'll look at my different categories and I'll pull one of the concepts and then write the whole post out.
That's so brilliant. And you shared that with our mastermind. And especially as someone who I work really visually, having the Post-its, and you even had them color coordinated, it made every part of my type A personality so fulfilled.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful because I actually find the creation side of business a little bit more challenging. That's not necessarily my forte, but I can tap into it when I need to, and having strategies like that were so helpful. So go get you. We are in no way affiliated with Post-its. However, if Post-its would like to sponsor us, we will allow it. But go get yourself some Post-its and try this because it really was a game changer.
Yeah. And I would love to gift your audience a free training. It goes deeper on not just content creation, but how you can actually create a course or a product using Post-it notes. And I have a whole free training on that.
I would love if you would share that for me personally.
Yeah. So you guys can just go to jessglazer.com/postit to profit free.
Okay. And we'll link that in the show notes too, so that you guys can find it really easily. And you can also have your type A mind just completely satisfied. You're welcome, friends.
Yeah. Post-its are so good.
I love that. Okay. I could literally talk to you all day long, but we actually have a mastermind call for our group in a couple of minutes. So for those who want to find out about you, follow your amazing pizza analogies, and just Insta stalk you in general, tell us where to find you online, and then anywhere. And I know you actually have some really exciting things coming up and launching too. So I'd love if you would fill us in on that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Instagram mostly, and I'm going to be at jess.glazer, Glazer. You can head over to my website to find out how to work together, jessglazer.com. But I am on Instagram. I talk to everybody in DM. So please DM me. I love talking to people. Let me know where you came from. And then in terms of what is coming up, so I have a signature 90-day business course. It's called Empower University. And that's where we help really starter businesses build online courses. We work with any type of coach, entrepreneur, solopreneur. It is definitely a lot of health and fitness coaches, but we do work with everybody. And we are in the middle of our spring class right now. We actually bumped our summer class up. So instead of opening in June, we are opening this week.
Oh my gosh. So exciting. Yeah. Super exciting, especially now, because like we said, I think a lot of us are starting to look at, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to serve more people by having a digital aspect of my current business. And like we said, if you don't already have that in place, find a mentor. Find Jess. Don't find just a mentor. I actually truly don't know of anyone else I would recommend more than you. So this is an unsolicited testimonial, but truly find someone who's done it and who can show you the way. That's the fastest way to find success in what you want to do. I love that. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have one final question, and it's one that I'm loving to hear people's answers now more than ever, because I think that one of the things I have struggled with in being very type A, always vision focused and looking forward, is stopping to acknowledge the progress that I'm making or the things that I did really, really well. And so we just call that like your powerhouse moment. So I'd love to know, in the last week or two in this whole crazy situation, what's a moment that you can, whether you acknowledged it at the time or you just are thinking of it right now, where you can stop and be like, yeah, you know what? I was a total powerhouse. What would that be for you?
Ooh, it's so funny. This is so hard for me. Celebration is something I'm working on. So a powerhouse moment recently would probably be the way that I am showing up in my business and not allowing the opportunity and the stress and the overwhelm take over, and sitting in a place of more presence than I ever have. And I truly think for myself and my husband, Mike, we've been talking about, for us, we think a lot of the lesson behind this pandemic and the quarantine for us has been the slowing down and the pause and the surrender, which is just, once again, the same theme coming up. But I think we're both we're really like sitting in that. And so whether it's been launching or doing extra things, doing it from a place of not as stressed out type A. And that for me is a really big win.
Oh, okay. Amen to that. I'm like, praise hands emoji. Jess, thanks so much for being here today.
You're the best, Liz. Thank you so much.